I'm going to try and make sense of the situation regarding Frank Lampard's sacking by going through what I've read today with key points, with some real interesting and quite disturbing points that are being made and revelations that are reports, not 100% confirmed, but are reports. And if there is any substance, then Thomas Tuchel is going to walk into a nightmare. So I'm just going to go through all this for you. I've followed up my announcement video earlier today that Frank Lampard was sacked. I said there'll be a later video today, and there is, and it's just to go through everything, to make sense of everything, because I still feel like I've got a sick feeling in my stomach because a Chelsea legend, a Chelsea icon, has been sacked as manager. I know there's a difference between someone as a player and as a manager, and I was championing Frank Lampard to be given the time to come out of this difficult situation, out the other side as a better manager. But it looks as though he was on a hiding to nothing. And it's such a shame to say. There's a lot of criticism of Chelsea and the Chelsea board at the minute, which I understand. But I'm going to just try and break these reports down. So, without further ado, let's get cracking. So I want to take you to a point regarding Frank Lampard's contract. Now, we all were under the impression it's a 3-year deal. It actually turns out to be a 2-year contract with the option of another year. And if you think about it, if you think about what Frank Lampard achieved last season, the top 4 finish and getting to the FA Cup final, that should have been good enough for an additional year to be triggered, or at least there to be a discussion. And the fact that it never happened gives you an indication of the situation regarding the board and Frank Lampard, and the relationship which is being reported between Frank Lampard and Marina Granovskaia to becoming strained, and to the point where it's began to deteriorate. And just to note on this, The Athletic have done a real good article and an in-depth article, which I won't post up on here because I'll just talk you through it, but a prominent source speaking back last August said the moment he goes on a bad run of 4 or 5 games, Chelsea will decide to make a change. Lampard won't last long if there's a serious downturn in form, especially after all the money that's been spent. He's in a precarious position, and I can only see it going one way. That's from a Chelsea insider, speaking back in August. And it gives you a real indication of the situation that Frank Lampard was in, the relationship with the board and Marina Granovskaia in particular, despite the fact that to this day, his relationship with Roman Abramovich remains strong, and it was Roman himself that gave the statement on Frank Lampard being removed from as manager. Having had the meeting with Frank Lampard at Stamford Bridge today in a 30-minute meeting, diverting Frank Lampard from going to Cobham to take training to go to Stamford Bridge instead. So what's the situation which has led to Frank Lampard being sacked? According to various reports, there's all sorts of different points to note. And the first point to note is the situation regarding Kepa in the closed season. We saw Kepa struggle for form and for confidence, and was replaced by Frank Lampard for Willy Caballero quite prominently towards the end of the season. In the closed season, it was muted that there was conversations between Marina Granovskaia and Frank Lampard that the club's world record investment for a goalkeeper needed to be mollycoddled, needed to have an arm put round him to try and get the best out of him. Frank Lampard had asked for a new goalkeeper and was continually told to try and get the best out of Kepa. That was why the moment the season kicked off, there was no replacement goalkeeper in place. Kepa was still there with Willy Caballero. Kepa started the season, a couple of poor performances, notably Liverpool, where he gave a goal to Sadio Mane for a mistake. Frank Lampard then insisted after that, and Chelsea signed Edouard Mendy. And Edouard Mendy's been number 1 at the club ever since, with Kepa restricted to cup games. By that point, the relationship was strained and was then beginning to deteriorate, with also Frank Lampard asking for Declan Rice. Again, these are just reports. There's nothing that's confirmed. There's 2 sides to every story. I'm just giving you the details that I've been reading throughout the course of the day. Frank Lampard championed the signing of Declan Rice, but the Chelsea board refused. They didn't want to pay the money, 60, 70, 80 million, and look as though they got egg on their faces to bring back someone who was released by the academy for having been deemed as not good enough of a Chelsea standard in the first place. Frank Lampard kept pushing, he kept being told no. So Frank Lampard himself And we've seen over recent weeks with a poor form with Frank Lampard has called out the players. He's criticised the players quite openly, and it's believed that the players haven't taken kindly to that. Obviously, the public criticism of the players has not gone down well with the board either. And it's believed that as of December, Marina Granovskaia was looking for possible potential replacements if Chelsea's form didn't improve. And as we've seen, it didn't. 5 defeats from the last 8 games in the Premier League with real poor performances against Man City, but Leicester in particular. And it's even being reported that after the Leicester game, Frank Lampard went round the players one by one, shook their hands and thanked them for their efforts, seemingly knowing that his fate was possibly sealed, despite the fact he led the team against Luton yesterday. There's more and more reports coming out about player unrest, and it's believed that Tony Rudiger and Cesar Azpilicueta have clashed a number of times, with Cesar Azpilicueta trying to keep the peace within the squad. There's reports, again these are not confirmed, it's just reports that we're reading, that the younger Chelsea players are embedded into the Chelsea first team and into the squad were seen as being given favour by players who were disgruntled and not playing, which leads to obviously player unrest, which is why you're seeing reports of Aspi trying to calm the situation down. There's also reports that players were not spoke to and ignored by the manager, and that's sort of hard and difficult to believe, where Frank Lampard has always championed the squad, championed the fact that you're going to need every single player in your squad over the course of a season. So to hear that sort of thing is quite difficult to understand. But it looks as though some of the players were disgruntled for not having any clear tactical instruction and being ignored. It's believed that Frank Lampard was frustrated being left with a bloated squad once the window had shut. Obviously, trying to get players out on loan or try and get players away from the squad. It was a difficult situation with COVID, the pandemic, and the financial implications affecting football clubs worldwide. And as a result, as we saw, we had 3 left-backs at the club, 5 centre-backs at the club, and the likes of Victor Moses and Danny Drinkwater, who were unregistered, left at the club and playing with the development squad. So Chelsea's form has been poor. We all know that. We all can agree that. And it's believed or being reported that after the Man City game, Roman Abramovich was very, very unhappy with the situation. The Athletic quote people close to even those who do play most weeks at Chelsea and said the problem was the manager didn't talk to the players. Well, the only ones he liked. I know of players who weren't in the team that didn't hear from him for many months. It's very frustrating for a player because you don't know what you have to do better. What the manager is thinking. It's crazy. Obviously, when Chelsea on their 17-game unbeaten run, the coach is not going to make too many changes. But you still need to talk to people. Players are going to be very wary about knocking on the manager's door themselves because it can be perceived negatively. Another source, quoted in the article, says, very weird for me that Lampard's way of working was to be distant to the players. It was a plan until very recently. He used to know how to approach players, but he seemed to have forgotten. The same article quotes the fact that what happened to Marcos Alonso was a red flag in terms of Lampard being able to control the dressing room. We all know what happened to Marcos Alonso, what he reportedly did. We don't need to go into that. But there's also a feeling within the squad that regular changes to the team prevented players from building a system and building confidence together. And when you read that sort of quote and that sort of comment, you have to look at the situation, and Chelsea never had a fully fit squad or a fully fit first team, what we all probably would say is our strongest 11, available to play with each other over a period of time, over 5, 6, 7 games. There's always been somebody with a knock or somebody injured. So that goes against Frank, but it's clear that there was a problem with motivating players and trying to get the best out of them. And the board believed that at the time of his sacking, he couldn't do it. In fact, the Athletic goes on to say, you didn't have to be a rocket scientist to figure it out. There were too many influential voices outside the starting 11 causing issues. There was a danger of a bit of divide developing between those playing and those who weren't. The body language of some told a story. There were those who were putting in the same effort as others in training. Like a disease, you get issues and it spread. It's obviously got a lot worse when Chelsea began losing regularly. It says that players began to grow suspicious of Frank Lampard's job security when one member of the backroom staff, who was not appointed by him, said to some of the players, don't worry, this will all be over in a couple of weeks. And that's quite alarming, really. It is quite alarming. And I guess this whole situation is just a complete mess, really. And people talk about player power. People talk about influence of certain aspects of the dressing room. And if you've got a manager that's not talking to the players, you're always going to get some sort of a divide. Now, again, these reports that I'm reading out and some of these comments that are being made, there's no confirmed substance behind it. It's not 100% confirmed this is the case. But I'm just trying to give you guys an indication as to why Chelsea have made a decision that they've made today. And everything's just not rosy, or wasn't rosy at all. The fact that Jody Morris has also left Chelsea today is also quite alarming, really, as to the situation. So I just wanted to do this video. I just wanted to give you guys a bit more detail as to what happened to Frank Lampard. But it's clear something had to change, despite the fact I didn't want to see it. Based on what I'm reading and what I've gone through in this video, it's clear something had to change. Thomas Tuchel has got a job on to turn the dressing room around, to bring everybody together. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Frank Lampard got a top 4 finish and reached the FA Cup final, and I think if we're offered that right now, we'll all bite your hand off for it where we are. But we're only 5 points behind top 4 in 9th at the moment. I know our form has been bad. We've got the players to turn it around. Let's see what happens with Thomas Tuchel. Let's see if he can come in and galvanise the club and galvanise the squad and get the best out of the players that he's got there to work with. I guess we have to wait and see. So let me know what you think about this video in the comments section. Drop a like on it for me. Subscribe to the channel and have a good Monday evening. It's not ideal. I still got a sick feeling in my stomach, but I just had to do this particular video. Enjoy your Monday night. See you guys tomorrow.